Institutions and Insurance meeting. We do have a couple of folks who are coming up from another committee. We're not taking any action today, so we will go ahead and begin our committee today. First of all, I'll ask, are there any requests for bill introductions? I see one or two maybe. Yes. Go ahead, come to the podium and announce yourself.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Eric Turek from the Kansas Department of Insurance. One bill for introduction today. It's RS 0556, which concerns the creation of a real-time verification system of auto insurance.
Thank you. Committee, are there any questions? Any objections? Seeing none, we'll send that forward. Thank you. Any other bill introductions from anybody? Committee, audience? Okay, seeing none, thank you. We'll begin with presentations, and today we're going to hear from our credit union. So first we have Julie Murray, Administrator, Kansas Department of Credit Unions. Julie, would you come up and introduce yourself and tell us all we need to know about your association, your department?
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm Julie Murray. I'm the administrator for the Kansas Department of Credit Unions. It's a role in which I've served since my appointment in 2022. And I do appreciate the opportunity to share information with you today about the credit unions and the role of the department. My testimony is quite short. It's a short summary of the credit union regulatory system along with the Kansas credit unions. Our credit union system began in 1929 in Kansas, which predates the Federal Credit Union Act, by the way. With the chartering of the Topeka Post Office Credit Union, which still serves its members today, much the same way as it did over 95 years ago. We currently have 45 state-chartered credit unions with assets in excess of $6.5 billion. There are 18 federal credit unions with assets of over $4 billion, and we have one state-chartered corporate credit union that serves credit unions in Kansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, Nebraska, Colorado, and Montana. They do investment, liquidity, and cash management products and services for their credit unions as well as deposits. Our agency began in 1968 when the legislature approved the plan to move the regulation and examination of credit unions from the Office of the State Bank Commissioner, formalizing the agency's mission to provide for management, control, regulation, and general supervision of the state-chartered credit unions. The legislature requires all state-chartered credit unions to pay an annual examination fee to fund the agency, thereby assuring the agency will be fully funded without the assistance of state dollars. All fees are remitted to the state treasurer to be held in the credit union fee fund, except for $100,000, which is credited to the state general fund. Our agency is small. Our staff consists of 12 FTEs, an administrative officer, an administrative assistant, 8 financial examiners, and a financial examiner administrator, and myself. All member accounts and deposits in Kansas credit unions are insured by the National Credit Union Share Insurance Fund, which was created in Congress in 1970 to insure member deposits in federally insured credit unions. The limit is $250,000 per individual depositor. It is administered by the National Credit Union Administration. The NCU SIF is backed by the full faith and credit of the United States government. State law requires the agency to examine our Kansas state-chartered credit unions at least every 18 months to ensure with financial stability and compliance. Our average examination cycle is 15 months. Some credit unions are on a 12-month cycle if they're larger or more complex. 18 months is the max we can go, so we never try to get that far. We operate and conduct our examinations under the same standards equivalent to the National Credit Union Administration. These standards have qualified the KDCU to be continually accredited by NASCUS, which is the National Association of State-Chartered Credit Union Supervisors. We conduct a risk-based examination. We evaluate key financial risk areas consisting of capital, asset quality, management, earnings, asset liability management, and sensitivity to market risk. Each of these is assigned an individual rating of 1 to 5. I look at it as 1 is the least financial risk, and 5 is the most. Some people say best to worst. Teachers' credit unions think it's a grade, but it's really an assignment of financial risk. In my mind, 1 and 2 is a very well-run credit union. I have no concerns about them. We just might have suggestions on the 2s. So, okay. Just some information about our Kansas credit unions. In the state chartered credit unions, we have a little over 500,000 members. Credit Union of America in Wichita is our largest state chartered credit union, and they have over $1.6 billion in assets. Our newest credit union is Catholic's Credit Union in Hutchinson, which was chartered in 2005, and it's just under 200,000 in assets. I will say I am working with someone who wants to start a new credit union in the Wichita area. That would be a minority-based credit union. It's a long process, but we're working with them. Our credit unions actually do credit union lending. So they do secured loans, unsecured loans, mortgage loans, and member business loans. My smallest credit union worked with me for several months to do their own version of a payday alternative lending program. They really want to hit some people that are at risk and provide them a way out. So we worked with them on that. The services they offer, basic checking, savings, debit cards, bill payment, online, remote deposit, all of the same things that our banks are doing. When we look at our credit union financial performance, the information that I've given you is as of the third quarter of last year from the call report statistics. So we had $6.5 billion in assets, $5 billion in loans, almost $5.5 billion in share deposits. Our average delinquency ratio was 1.4%, which feels high, but that is a little skewed because we have some very small credit unions that may be running a higher percentage, but it's really just a couple of loans, if that makes sense. The return on assets for our credit unions was 0.41 on September 30th, and our net worth is averaging at 14.25%. Those are the basics that I have for you this morning, so that concludes my testimony. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you so much. I do have a couple questions.
Sure.
So how long have you been with the department?
I started in 2019.
So have you seen any changes or challenges over the last 5 or 6 years that concern you?
Wow. The last 5 or 6 years have been really unusual, right? I started right before COVID. Like I was out in an examination, was actually in training in DC, came back and they were like, everything is closed. That changed our balance sheets for our credit unions, excess money, people weren't spending. There was a lot of liquidity. And after that stayed for a while, the credit unions started lending up, spending that money. Then the economy changed. People started spending their savings. That's tightened our liquidity. That's a concern. Everybody's fighting over the same deposits. We're always worried about cybersecurity, and it seems like it's getting worse every day. Delinquencies on the rise. We've been talking about this for a few years, expecting it to come, and here it is. I guess what really concerns me is the one thing we can't control is our consumer behavior. You know, things that used to work in the past don't necessarily work anymore. We're not spending as much time focusing on building savings and wealth as some people are accumulating things. And I think that that's a risk for not just our credit unions, but our economy. So those are the things that I've seen that maybe they didn't change, but I got more aware of them.
Thank you. And my second question, then I'll open it up to the committee. When you were talking about your rankings of your credit unions, and 1 being low risk, 5 being high risk, do you have many that are in that high risk category?
So, not that I thought you might ask this question. I look at it, we have 96% of our assets are in 1s and 2s. So most of our deposits are in 1s and 2s. 3s and 4s would be the other 4%. Sometimes when you look at 3s, it's not really that, it's a risk to the depositors, but we're looking at credit unions that maybe are having some earnings concerns. You know, the smaller credit unions are struggling to earn. Not that there's any concern about any deposits because their equity is fine, but we're trying to work to get them in a more positive situation. So most of our credit unions are in 1s and 2s.
Thank you. Committee, questions for Julie? Senator Fack.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And Julie, thank you for your presentation. You took one of my questions here. So you really never talked about 5s. You have, my question was how many 4s and 5s do you have out of the 45?
I might have 2 4s. I have no 5s.
Okay. Question number 2, Madam Chair. 20 years since a new credit union. That kind of caught my eye. You know, has there been a lot of consolidation What do you see in the state of Kansas going on in that area?
So we are averaging about 2 mergers a year. The driving factors, I had one last year that was a very viable credit union, but spent a year and a half trying to find a new CEO, manager. And after a year and a half, couldn't fill a position, and they merged with another. So in my world, my credit unions, half of them are under $20 million. We have small institutions. So this, when you're looking at a $100 million credit union, I'm thinking that's a good-sized credit union, right? So we had a merger for that reason, and that happens more often in the small credit unions. It's usually that versus earnings or viabilities, because those small credit unions that are they have a niche, right? They have members that they're serving and that are loyal. So the consolidations we've seen have really been about management and finding qualified people.
Thank you. Committee, any other questions? Did you have another one, Mike? Do you? Yes. Senator Fack.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just wondering about federal credit unions versus state credit unions. Have you seen a change from one or the other, or what's kind of going on in that world?
So, last year we introduced some revisions to our bill to try to make sure that we were attractive to our state chartered credit unions. And the feedback that I've gotten was very good. Our credit unions like being able to pick up the phone and speak with their regulator. I think with the state chartered credit unions, there are a lot of benefits to that, as well as our program maybe dialing in on what we see as risk versus what the national credit union takes as a whole and looks at. So those are the positives. The federal credit unions, what I've always heard in the past is they wanted, the most recent reason for changing charter was because they wanted to cross state lines. So when it comes to that, I think that we're kind of on even keel, and we haven't lost any credit unions since I've came on to a federal charter. I would be interested to maybe have some come back, but we're not there either.
Thank you. Committee, any other questions? Very good. Thank you, Julie, so much for being here. Really appreciate it. And of course, if there's anything we can do to help you, let us know. Thank you so much. Committee, our second presentation today is Emily Beam on behalf of the Kansas Credit Union Association. So Emily, welcome to the committee. You to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Vice Chair Fagg, Ranking Member Francisco, and the rest of the committee for the opportunity to speak with you about the credit union industry in Kansas. My name is Emily Beam, and I am representing the Kansas Credit Union Association this session, along with Cale Beam, who is seated behind me, and the Federico Durst Consulting Group team. Today, I will provide an overview of our association and what we do to support member credit unions. I'll give a brief history of the industry, a description of the credit union structure, and an illustration of their economic impact and current industry trends. The Kansas Credit Union Association plays a crucial role in the credit union industry. We represent 60 credit unions headquartered in Kansas and the roughly 1.2 million Kansans who are members of those credit unions. As part of a 5-state league that includes Missouri, Oklahoma, Texas, and Arkansas, we are the largest credit union league in the country, offering a wide range of services to our members. Many of you may remember us as the Heartland Credit Union Association, which was just Kansas and Missouri until 2023, when we merged with the other 3 states. While merging created some changes, and changes can be challenging, the overall effect has been very beneficial. We can offer more services and resources to better serve our members and gain insights into what is happening in other states. While advocacy is certainly a significant focus, we also provide a variety of other services. Compliance and regulatory assistance. There are training, resources, and experts standing by to keep credit unions on track. Asset-specific support. We have advisory groups and networking opportunities to engage with peer credit unions of all sizes. Research and statistics. We have on-demand statistical summaries, economic profiles, performance reports, and community or member surveys to help credit unions make informed decisions. And peer group engagement. There are opportunities to participate in collaboration or mentoring programs, councils, chapters, sister societies, and young professional programs, to name a few. The first credit union in the United States was established in 1908 in New Hampshire by Francophone workers whose working hours extended before and after the bank's hours. To have a place to store their money and access to financial services, they formed an all-volunteer staff that operated only in the evenings and on federal holidays to serve the Francophone workers in the area. This successful model attracted other unserved and underserved populations, such as low and middle-income families and farmers who were often denied services by traditional financial institutions. As a result, they began forming credit unions across the country. Today, many groups representing specific industries and companies, such as teachers, Boeing employees, healthcare workers, and police officers, have all established credit unions. The first credit union in Kansas was founded in 1929 during the Great Depression to serve Postal Service workers. It is still operating today just a few blocks away on Kansas Avenue. In the same year, the Kansas Legislature passed the State Credit Union Act, 5 years before Congress, creating the framework of credit unions to be chartered. Kansas was also one of the first states to establish an independent regulator for credit unions, acknowledging the structural differences between credit unions and for-profit institutions. Credit unions are unique in their structure. Unlike banks and other financial institutions, they are not-for-profit, member-owned cooperatives, similar to agricultural and electric cooperatives, with a strong focus on serving their members. I'll touch on 5 points that highlight their differences. Number one, they are governed by a volunteer board of directors elected by and from the membership. They are locally owned and operated by credit union members, each member having an equal vote and share in the credit union. Number three, profits are returned to members in the form of higher returns on savings, lower rates on loans, lower fees on accounts, and direct dividends. Last year, Kansas credit unions returned over $100 million to their members. One item often brought up is that credit unions themselves don't pay income taxes. That is correct, as they are owned by the members, and the members pay income taxes on dividends that are earned. Credit unions do pay other taxes, such as property taxes and payroll taxes. Credit unions are prohibited from raising capital from outside sources. Credit unions have capital standards similar to other financial institutions for safety and soundness. However, they must maintain or grow their capital levels through retained earnings. And number five, they are required to publicly report their finances under IRS requirements for not-for-profit organizations. Despite only holding 11.8% of total deposits in Kansas, credit unions have a significant economic impact. With just under 1.2 million members across the state, 40% of Kansans are credit union members. These institutions employ over 3,600 Kansans, all dedicated to meeting their members' needs. This member-driven mission and nonprofit status of credit unions enable them to serve low and middle-income families, often overlooked or unqualified by other financial institutions, providing access to essential financial services. In 2024, Kansas credit unions supported their members in several ways, including making over 90,000 loans to Kansans with a credit score of 640 or below, making over 38,000 small dollar loans to help Kansans bridge shortfalls between paychecks or manage unexpected expenses. This could be a $200 loan for groceries or gas to get through the month. Financial counseling, assistance with budgeting, or financial literacy training provided to over 64,000 Kansans and K-12 students through their credit union. Offering over 51,000 skip-a-pays or other loan deferments to help Kansans overcome temporary financial hardships without negatively impacting their credit score. And originating over 570,000 auto loans to Kansans. This representation underscores the vital role credit unions play in enhancing financial security for families throughout Kansas. There has been significant consolidation and mergers among credit unions, similar to trends observed in banks, resulting in a steady decrease in the number of credit unions. In Kansas, the number of chartered credit unions has dropped from 122 in 2005 to just 66 today, This issue isn't limited to Kansas. Nationally, the number of credit union charters has fallen from 8,854 to 4,645 in the last 20 years, according to the National Credit Union Administration. Several factors are driving this consolidation in the financial services market, including stringent compliance requirements and labor shortages. Many credit unions operate with small staff sizes, making it challenging to fill positions and maintain daily operations when managers leave or retire. Since the passage of the Dodd-Frank Act in 2010, more than 150 new regulations have been implemented for financial institutions, further complicating the situation for smaller credit unions. I would like to close by thanking this committee and the legislature for passing HB 2561, the Credit Union Modernization Act, last session. This bill updated our statutes to better reflect the modern market. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on behalf of the Kansas Credit Union Association. We look forward to working with you this session to ensure Kansans have access to affordable financial services. I'm happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, Emily. So first of all, I would just like to say welcome, happy you're here. I've been a credit union member for probably 35 years. So when I moved to Topeka, it was the Educational Credit Union that then became something else and became something else, and now it's Azura. But I've got every one of those membership cards in my purse. Do I get any kind of a discount, any rate increase, anything? It is interesting how they do change names over time, but I do appreciate all the work that the credit unions do and the links that they provide to our community. And one last thing I'll mention, and then I'll open for questions. You had a Save at School program that started at Educational Credit Union, and I don't know if Azura still does that, but that was encouraging elementary students in the district to save at school. So they would bring in their pennies, and somebody from the credit union would come and they'd open up an account for them, and then it would just build. And that probably did more good, not only goodwill, but it taught them the value of saving. So I would encourage credit unions to continue to do that, because I just think that was a fabulous program that really inspired kids and got them all excited, so, and their parents as well. So committee, questions for Emily? Senator Fagg?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and Emily, thank you for your presentation, very informative. I want to thank you for, 40% of Kansas are credit union members. That's a big number. 3,600 employees, economic development big. Thank you for the financial counseling like she was talking about, because I think we need more of that today than you realize. I was helping with a deal at Butler County at one time where they had some business questions, and the last 10 was on managing a checkbook. That was missed more than anything on that whole test. And I was shocked with that. So, that type of thing is very important. I am hoping that you're having good conversations with your federals. Since the passage of Frank Dodd Act of 2010, that's been a major problem, and hopefully with the change that we need to make sure there's some things happening in that area. So with that, I want to say thank you, and any way we can help with the Frank Dodge deal, I'm there to help with that one too. I've lived that.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Yes, questions. Senator Warren?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your presentation today, Emily. I appreciate it. I want to kind of dovetail on what the chair asked about and what our vice chair asked about. So it's a question sort of either for maybe you or Julie, and the question is regarding regulations. And I serve on or have served on the Joint Committee on Administrative Rules and Regulations, and so often we see it's the rules and regulations that impact our industries in not particularly a helpful way. So I'm glad, because I had the question in my mind and then I saw your testimony specifically addressed it. So do you have anything that Kansas can do? I know you're probably working on it at the federal level, but anything Kansas can do to help with some of that? Because I know my community, and I appreciate the option in banking that the credit unions provide, and I think, more options in the market are a good thing. So anything you're looking at specifically that we can help with?
I'd be interested if our regulator has any thoughts on this too. This year, I think there's a few bills that we're paying attention to, on the federal level. Well, I guess if we're focusing on options, on financial institution options, you know, I know that there's a public funds bill coming up that's been talked about. You know, that's something we're still looking into. That's something that's always been of interest for the credit unions. But we're still talking with our membership to decide if that's a route we would like to go. Be curious if Julie has any thoughts on this too.
And I'm glad to hear that there is another credit union thinking about opening that we heard about in Wichita. So I think we heard from the bankers last week that it had been quite some time since a new bank had been opened. 15 years, maybe?
Yeah, they said maybe 2008, and it's been 2005 since the last credit union.
Yeah, so glad to see some activity in that area too, and hopefully the regulations aren't too onerous. We heard it was a long process, but thank you for working on those too. And we can talk offline too. That'd be great. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Clues?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your presentation. Could you speak a little bit to, under member-driven mission, I thought the financial counseling assistance with budgeting or financial literacy training provided. Could you speak to that a little bit? Who do you use? Is there some like straight across the board for the credit unions? And then I belong to one, but I don't, I've never seen that really advertised. But then again, maybe I wasn't aware, but didn't look for it.
Thank you, Senator. So each credit union kind of handles their own counseling. And I actually, myself, so I first became a credit union member when I was 14. And I think I was 16 when I came in and hadn't even realized I had overdrafted my account and didn't understand how it all worked yet. And when I walked in, the teller took the time to explain to me. I was cashing my paycheck, took the time to explain to me. And when she saw how surprised I was, we went in the back and walked through some different things. But I would say, as far as a little more planned time to come get some counseling, every credit union has their own system. Some may advertise better than others, but all tend to have, especially if you walk in and ask for help, they have different tools to help with that. And some are involved with schools, and they go directly to the school and help. So the idea is to be very involved in the community.
Just to clarify, are you, on Senator Clues's question, are you saying that it's really an internal option that
Correct.
credit unions participate in? They don't really use anybody from the outside, they just do it internally?
Correct.
Okay, thank you very much. Senator.
Hi, Emily. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your presentation. Some of the folks that have been here a while know that I've been a credit union member for far longer than Senator Diedrich, and I too was 14, which is amazing. You know, when I think about, no, I wasn't. No, I was adding it up. I think I became a classroom teacher in 1971, and I was 13 at the time, which is very interesting. And so that's when the CSD, Credit Union Consolidated School District Number 1. So those of us who are teachers, educators, were often started out with credit unions. I too had them. I didn't do this. They set it up with the school where they came in, did the little card. The kids some had nickels, some had dimes. Parents could donate to this where they had their little starting card. I think we need to do that again. I just think there's no focus on savings, and people like, savings account, what's that? Spend what you have, and with their debit cards and everything, most people don't know how to balance a checkbook, and I think all of those things are important. So I just want to reiterate, I would love to see them do that kind of a program again with the schools. I think it would be very well received. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. Committee, any other questions? Oh, Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Ms. Beam, for being here. You talked in your testimony about the more than 38,000 small dollar loans. Can you give us any more information? Because we know that that's very important to people if they come across an emergency or they're just trying to get to their next paycheck. And I'm guessing the credit union loan would be quite a bit less than a payday loan?
Correct, yes. Yeah, that is something that credit unions are really proud of and talk a lot about. The interest on that loan is not, it's what you see more to a similar car loan or anything like that. But it's different for every member and for every credit union, but it is just an opportunity to help get through a tough year, a tough month, whatever it is. So it could be, as I'd mentioned, like groceries or gas. It could be just to keep up with a car loan payment for a short period of time. But it is something that a lot of credit unions participate in.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate that. I was a credit union volunteer and did the fifth Saturdays for our credit union when it started at the community mercantile. But I was very appreciative when the credit union was willing to give me a loan on my bicycle because I didn't have a car. So it was very helpful at one point. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Emily, if you don't mind, I think John would like to step up. And would you introduce yourself and tell us what you'd like us to know?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I didn't mean to push Emily away from the podium. John Federico, Durst Consultant, have been working with credit unions 29 legislative sessions. It's been a long time. They were my very first client when I went out on my own. But to Senator Warren's question, which, thank you, number one, are there any regulations and things that need to be addressed to help this particular industry? I just thought it was worth mentioning that every fall, just ahead of the legislative session, and this meeting just took place yesterday, we do sit down with the banks, we sit down with the community banks, and we talk about what issues. Even though we're competitors, if you want to call it that, 9, 10, 11% market share for credit unions, we agree on an awful lot of things, and we try to address those problems. There are some things we don't, obviously, but we do have open conversations about where we align and, you know, making sure we don't step on anybody's toes. The public funds issue, we know that the KBA has been working on that for quite a while. We're having a board meeting at the association level, I think it's tomorrow, to lay out our legislative agenda. So I just wanted to make a point that there's always ongoing conversations. It's not always kumbaya, but we always hope it is. The other thing I want to point out, Madam Chair, very quickly is credit to Emily and Cale, who in less than a week have stepped up and in advanced role with the Credit Union Association. I think she did great work presenting. So we look forward to working with you this session.
Thank you very much. And I hope we were gentle, Emily. Thank you. Any other questions, committee? Oh, I'm sorry, Senator Fack.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. That brought up a question since we was talking public funds. Does credit unions have, like county treasurer, bank with them? Do they have any public funds? Or do you know?
Currently do not hold public funds.
Okay, thank you.
Great question. Committee? Seeing no further questions, I would just remind you that tomorrow we have an overview of CAPERS. That will be the primary topic for our committee meeting, and if we have any bill introductions, of course, we will entertain those. So thank you all so much. Great presentations. Committee adjourned.